Hey, I'm doing a vlog that's just like actually a little bit of story time and just talking about kind of vlogging, like what's actually what's been going on with me lately. So about about in January, I started training for my WBC World Championship fight, which happened at the beginning of February. So when I started training for that fight, I kind of was getting back into more of my, I guess what would be normal training for myself a couple of years ago. And I started like running a lot more, and I had to get new shoes and stuff. Like it was just kind of a, I guess I have to go back before this. So at the very end of August last year, I had a bad accident. I was thrown from a horse into a fence, and I just fell in a way of someone who doesn't know how to fall off a horse correctly. And I was very lucky. I didn't break anything. I didn't tear anything, but I very, very badly bruised my spine and this ligament on my back, and I couldn't walk at all. Like I couldn't get up for a couple of weeks, and then I couldn't train for many months. It is the worst injury I've ever had, and hopefully will remain the worst injury I ever have. It was really, really intense. I have some vlogs on that of what it was like to actually be that out of everything, which has never been the case with the kinds of injuries that I've suffered prior to that. So coming off of that, coming off of like having to take months off of training, I got back into kind of being able to walk again and then being able to run again and things like this. So I had one fight after that. And right after that fight, I got booked for the WBC fight. So I had to like start amping up again after that. Starting from my injury in my back, I was pretty much only walking on treadmills because I needed to be able to control a lot of what I was able to and not able to do. And I was doing inclines and things like this. So I kind of got in the habit of running on a treadmill. When I continued to do that in training for my WBC fight, I was kind of like mixing in running on the road again because road work is actually just far, far better. And as I was getting ready for my WBC fight in January leading to February, I lost both my big toenails. They just both, this happens with running. You get kind of rubbing or impact or whatever while you're running, and your big toenails get blood underneath them, and then they separate from the nail bed, and then they come off and things like this. So I've lost many, many toenails over the years. Not a big deal. It's ugly, but it's like, it doesn't actually impact a lot other than occasionally hurting when you kick on not having a nail on your nail bed kind of thing. So had my WBC fight. That was great. And then a little while after this, so just recently, like 2 weeks ago, so this is now April that we're in, so this was the very end of March, I went up to Kem's gym in Khao Yai Tiang, which is absolutely beautiful. His gym is incredible, and he has this amazing running route for his fighters, which is actually uphill both ways. So when you have this, like my parents say that they walk to school uphill both ways kind of thing, your run actually is uphill both ways. It's kind of incredible. So I was doing this great run at Kem's because I was training with him for a couple of days before having a fight up in Nakhon Ratchasima, which is Korat. And while I was running on the second day, I felt like I maybe had like stepped on a rock or something. I suddenly got this very sharp pain at the top of my right foot, kind of right underneath the toes. And it was enough that I kind of had to slow down and walk pretty much the rest of the way back on that run, but it wasn't super significant. It was like I must have just stepped on something, and I ended up training the rest of that day, and then after that I filmed a session with him, and then I fought on it. Then I came back, and like I was having a little bit of trouble with this foot, and what was weird is I kept getting this very sharp pain under my toenail on that, well, the new toenail that was growing on that foot. So I actually kept thinking it was my new toenail, and I kept cutting it shorter and shorter, thinking it was maybe like an ingrown toenail or something like this. But it was like on and off impacting my training and things like this. But then it just kept progressively getting worse. So this was a little over 2 weeks ago that I maybe stepped on this rock or whatever the thing is. And then last week, Kevin and I went up to just outside of Bangkok, and we did this like hardcore 2 days of filming. So we went up and we filmed with Wang Chinoy and Bang San for 2 days. So we got we got Bangsan in the morning, Wang Chinoy in the afternoon on the first day, and then we went back the next morning and got both of them back to back in the morning, and then drove down and got Jaran Sop that afternoon. So socially speaking, Sylvie's very shy. Sylvie's very, very introverted, and it actually takes a lot out of me to film these sessions for the Muay Thai Library. I get a lot out of it. I really love it. I would never exchange it for anything, but it is very hard for me. I need like recovery after. It's very socially difficult for me. And it was especially difficult because my foot has just been progressively getting worse. And I was really having a hard time with it filming these sessions. And when you're filming, and you know, we've driven all this way in order to be able to see them, you have to like organize being able to, you know, find time to do these sessions with these legends, and I'm trying to preserve their style. So I really want to give a lot of myself to these opportunities when they come up, being able to film for the Muay Thai Library. I basically have to like bite down and kind of just push through whatever it is that's going on with me in order to get these sessions done. My foot was making it so that I was very off balance. Like I couldn't actually put weight on certain parts of the foot, and it would just have this shooting pain occasionally when I would like angle at a certain way. And there were a couple of times when I was with Wang Chinoy, and Wang Chinoy is really scary to me. Like he's very intimidating anyway. He's the sweetest guy, but very, very intimidating. There were a couple of times he was having me like throw these really hard kicks, and I was coming down all kind of like wonk, and Kevin is like, Sylvie, get your shit together. I'm like, my foot really hurts. I'm trying, like my foot really hurts, and it's just this kind of like, whatever. Is that Sylvie can push through a lot, like whatever. So we get all of this filming done. I was totally like actually almost falling over with Jaran Sop on that second day with this like pain shooting 3 and not being able to put weight on certain parts of my foot and stuff. So we come back on a Friday. I went to training and was able to kind of like get through sparring and pad work. It was very painful, but I could get through it. It was just kind of like a balance thing. But then it just got like so significantly worse. I was at Sarklinmi, and I was getting ready for pad work there, and I literally just couldn't walk. Like I could not put any weight on my foot. And Tapi was like, "What is this?" Like he's never seen me have difficulty like that. And I was like, I don't know what it is. I think maybe it's my toenail, but it doesn't feel like my toenail anymore. So I was trying to figure out like what I could do. I was rolling my foot on a ball and stuff like this, thinking it was maybe like a tendon underneath. I was trying to like locate what this is. But when I was sparring with Yod Kun Pan, he noticed that I was having a really, really hard time with my foot. And so after we sparred, he had me sit down, and he actually massaged my foot for me for about 5 minutes. And he was like, I don't want to do too much because too much can overdo it, but just to like kind of, he says he massages himself all the time with like if he has a knee problem or something. So he's actually very good at finding these lines. And what was very instructive about that experience of him massaging my foot for me is that I had so much pain in my calf and in my knee, probably from trying to walk differently or trying to like rebalance myself differently to not hit this one spot on my foot, was causing all kinds of problems in the lines, like in the nerves leading all the way up my leg. So it was decided that I should probably go get some like leg massage, try to get this worked out. I have a very, very good massage shop that I go to that they do it for health. They understand like a lot of these lines and things like that. That seemed to help pretty well, but the pain became so persistent and so intense that I decided to make an appointment with a podiatrist. And because it's Songkran, it's Thai New Year, this guy who I wanted to go see isn't in town. So he was like, call me next week. And I really just felt like I could wait till next week, but I didn't want to wait until next week because the sooner I get it addressed, the sooner I'll be back to like being able to stand on it, things like this. So I didn't want to wait. So I actually made an appointment with the hospital. The thing about me going to see a doctor is that I don't tend to. This comes from two things. The first thing is that the way I grew up, I think that we had health insurance through my mom's work most of the time, but not all of the time. Like we really didn't go see a doctor unless we had something very wrong with us. And because I come from this culture, I'm American, so you know, health insurance and all these things, you really don't go to a doctor or the hospital unless something's like broken or won't stop bleeding. Like things like this. Like it seems like things have to be quite severe to go. In Thailand, that's not the case. Like if you have health insurance in Thailand and you have a fever, you go to the hospital. It's insane to me. Like when my trainer's like, oh, my son had a fever, so I brought him to the hospital. I'm like, this sounds crazy. Like this sounds like an overreaction to me. So one of the reasons I don't go to the doctor is that the way I grew up and the way health insurance is in America, you don't go to the doctor for small things. The other thing about this is that doctors tend to be quite conservative, and so they give you a conservative treatment or estimate on what you should be doing, and most of it is like, stop doing what you're doing altogether. And I don't listen to them, so I don't see the point in paying money to a person whose advice I have no intention of taking. It seems not only like a waste of money, but it seems disrespectful, honestly. So I don't tend to go to doctors because I don't tend to follow their advice of stop doing what you're doing and rest and this kind of thing. So when I decide to go, it's because something is really, really, really bad. like with my back, I had to go to the doctor for that. So I went into the hospital yesterday, and the doctor was like poking around in there, and he found where this spot is on my foot. I didn't even know exactly where it was because I had not like prodded around there the way that he was. I've gotten massages on it, and they didn't get exactly to the spot, but this little nubbin spot between kind of like the ball of my big toe over to the inside of it, he pushed on this, and the like flashing pain of this was so intense. It was so bad. And so he sent me for an x-ray. And when the x-ray came back, he said that he thinks that there's a fracture in this sesamoid bone. So the sesamoid bone is like underneath your, what are they called? Metatarsals. Like you have all these tiny bones in your feet, right? And so your toes are like this, and then there's actually bones underneath it right here, and that's what he believes is fractured. Kevin and I went Googling after this diagnosis. He says there's no point in doing surgery on it. The only way to treat it is surgery, which actually you can't put them back together. You would just take the bones out entirely. And he says that it's not, unless it's really bad, you really don't do the surgery because the pain of the incision becomes a problem in and of itself. So he was like, basically, this break is never going to heal itself. It's going to heal to the point where it doesn't hurt as much anymore, but then throughout your life, occasionally you'll aggravate it and you'll just have pain there. So I was basically sent home with this, like, it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks for the healing around the bone to take place for it to hurt less, but there's really nothing that we can do for it. Kevin and I Googled afterwards in order to kind of figure out why he said he thinks it's broken rather than that it is broken. And doctors don't tell you this kind of thing because it's not information that you necessarily need. But people can be born with a slight separation of these bones anyway. And so it's hard to diagnose without further visioning, expensive tests, things like this, to see whether you are a person who already had this kind of separation. They'd have to x-ray my other foot, do MRIs, this kind of thing. Whether you already have this separation or whether the separation is a fracture, there are ways to guess. He's a doctor, he knows what to look at, these kinds of things. So I have most likely a fracture in my foot, which is going to be annoying and bothersome for the rest of my life. But so I'm taking 10 days off right now in order to kind of allow it to heal and for the pain to kind of settle down a little bit. And then hopefully I can kind of reintroduce myself to training, because I really don't want to stop training and that kind of thing. But every time this happens, like anytime I have to take some time off or I have to slow down or any of these things, it re-establishes for me how important mental training is. And this allows me time to kind of focus more on that aspect of training and things like this. And this is something, it made me think of this, is that just the other day, this guy sent me a message on Instagram asking whether I thought Muay Thai gave you mental toughness, like if training Muay Thai gave you mental toughness. And I answered him, I was like, no, only purposefully working on your mental training will give you mental toughness. Although doing anything, any kind of sport, any kind of passionate thing that you really put yourself into will have a side effect of, you know, if you have to push through things, if you have to deal with pain, if you have to do any of these things, there will be a side effect of you getting a little bit better at doing those things, but that's not real mental toughness and that's not real mental training. And I had to think of a non-Muay Thai example in order to kind of explain this so that people don't think that I'm crazy. So take, for example, if we have a guy immigration who helps us, and he joined a running club, and he runs like 10K a day. And when we saw him, we're like, you look great. Like, you look much more happy and all this stuff. We didn't know what he had done. My husband commented about how great he looked, and he got this huge smile on his face, and he's like, I joined this running club, I run 10K a day, whipped out his phone, started showing us pictures of the running group and stuff like this. And his job at immigration is so stressful. There's always like a million people. It's all non-Thais who are like having stressful situations that they waited too long to try to fix. They're complicated to fix. They don't want to spend any money. Like, it's just, I could not do his job. His job is very stressful. When we saw him this time, he looked much less stressed. He looked really good. So this running that he was doing had helped him de-stress. It gave him an outlet for his stress for his running. This also makes you maybe sleep better, your clothes fit better, so you're a little bit more confident. Like, all of these things happen when you take up running. But running did not actually make you less stressed, more confident, all of these things permanently or by itself. Because, say he twists his ankle and he can't run anymore, he can't do his running group, he can't do his 10K, it is not going to take many days of him not being able to do those activities for the stress of his job and the stress of his life and all of the things that he was experiencing before joining this running club are going to come crashing back in on him. And he has not actually fixed his brain to be able to deal with those things because he had basically a pressure gauge. He had something that could allow him to open up the pressure valve and alleviate some of that pressure, but he didn't actually fix anything in his brain in order to be able to deal with that stress without the running. You can use that as a shortcut. You can be like, oh my God, I'm so much less stressed because of all of these things I'm doing to kind of have an outlet. How do I actually now address my brain to be able to deal with these stresses? So that's the mundane example I'm giving to talk about how Muay Thai being my outlet or me being mentally tough because I go through all of these things. I am very tough. I was able to film 6 sessions on a broken foot, train on a broken foot, like all of these things that I was thinking to myself, how was I able to get through all of these sessions with Wang Chunwei Bangsan and Jaron Sap with my foot hurting, and then I come back to Pattaya and I'm just doing my own training. I'm just doing my sparring with Yod Kumpan, I'm just doing pads, I'm just doing whatever, and all of a sudden that pain was so intense that I couldn't really get through it. And one thing, I had the pressure of like, I need to get this done, this is my job, that allowed me to kind of bite down and get through that. And the other one didn't have that kind of urgency where it's like, I don't have to get through this training session. I will because I'm mean to myself and it's important to me to not back down. But the response I had to the pain was very different in that situation, in this situation, which goes to show that my brain is not the thing that's making me able to do this or able to do that. Like, I have to have like the mental fortitude that regardless of the situation, I'm able to deal with these things. And now that I'm taking these 10 days off, and who knows how my foot's going to be after that amount of time, because the doctor said 4 to 6 weeks to actually heal it, and 10 days is not that. I have to actually fix my brain. I have to actually address those things in my brain to be able to deal with this, rather than assuming that this side effect of mental toughness that I do have from these years of Muay Thai, like I do push through things. I do have like, I think that in the Under the Ropes documentary made about me by Simon Mulvaney, I had made a point about how Muay Thai has addressed issues in my normal life in that I take up space differently than I did before I did Muay Thai. That's a side effect of the Muay Thai, is that I kind of feel more comfortable to take up space. But things can happen that totally make me just turtle up and want to be tiny and not be seen because I didn't actually address what it was in my brain that made me not want to take up space. I just have this kind of like temporary conditional side effect of being able to take up more space like that. And I think that this is one of these things that when you have these side effects because of Muay Thai or because of fighting or because of any of these things, they're nice, like that you do benefit from them and they're wonderful. But you see this a lot with fighters who retire. When they retire, they completely lose their sense of identity, their confidence goes way down. There are all of these things that make it really hard because who you are is so tied into these things that you're doing, but you don't have them, you're not holding them. The thing that you're doing is kind of this container for them. And this is kind of like a nice little cheat sheet for me to realize how true this is, to be able to work on these things, hopefully be accountable and actually work on these things so that when such things like this happen to me, I can actually keep the mental toughness. I can actually have and involve and own the elements of fighting and training and working hard that make me feel good about myself. I can do those things without doing the fighting and the training and the filming and all these things, because eventually I'm not going to have those things, but also temporarily right now I don't have those things. So that's what's going on with me. That's what I'm thinking about. And I guess this is yet another call to the importance of actually learning how to manage your mind and your life, rather than having it be a convenient side effect of things that are not necessarily attached to those things, but seem correlated, if not caused, kind of thing. So yeah, I'm okay. I have a great deal of pain sometimes and no pain at other times. So I'm basically like, I'm not in constant pain the way I was with my back, which is great. It's one of these things where having the diagnosis is very helpful, because now I know how to Google things instead of just arriving at some horrible diagnosis on WebMD because of all these like symptoms that I'm not sure how they're attached. Now that I know what it is, I can really kind of work more on figuring out how to address this for myself and how I can work through this for myself. And yeah, it's pretty painful, but I'm going to be doing like weight training and stuff, since I can't really do a lot of like pivoting or putting weight on my foot and things like this. So I'm hoping I'm going to look like the cover of like a fantasy novel or something. I'll just be like totally Schwarzeneggered out, which is achieving a fantasy I had when I was a very little kid in the early 90s with T2 coming out and stuff like that. So stay tuned for that. Super, super muscly Sylvie coming in the next 14 days, I guess. Thank you guys. See you later.